And good morning, and welcome back to the California Small Farm Conference. My name is Evan Wigg. I'm with Community Alliance with Family Farmers. And today's workshop is Know Your Rights, Farmers, Workers, Immigrants, and Allies. So today's workshop is an incredibly important one, and certainly it's time sensitive, given what's happening here in California and across the country with a new administration and a lot of new changes and threats to agriculture, to farm worker communities, and to the immigrants who make California agriculture possible. We're really appreciative to have some wonderful speakers here. We're going to be talking about the legalities around immigrants here in California, and as well as some advocacy efforts and what this all means for you as farmers, perhaps as workers or allies working in the local food system. I wanted to just make a really important caveat before we begin. We are recording this workshop. However, the only thing that is seen on a recording are the speakers, and the only thing that is heard are the speakers. So you as attendees, whether in the chat or the Q&A, you will not be recorded, and we will not be sharing the lists or the chat history with anyone, though that'll all be deleted. So I do encourage you to participate. Though do know other attendees, if you're writing in the chat, they can see whatever name you signed up with. So just want to put that out there in terms of privacy, transparency, but we do want to have a frank conversation here, and hope that you feel comfortable and safe being a part of this. So with that, I appreciate all of you for being here, especially for those of you who are really asking what you can do in this moment. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Judith Redmond from Full Belly Farm. Thank you so much for being here and really being an instigator to make this workshop possible. So Judith, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Evan, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Judith Redmond. I'm a farmer and I work with Community Alliance with Family Farmers, and I'm here as a volunteer. And today our panelists are Nicole Gorney from VIDAS Legal, which VIDAS stands for Vital Immigrant Defense Advocacy and Services. And we're also joined by Vivian Wauters, who works with NorCal Resist. So we have two great organizations that are here joining us this morning. Our panel is going to cover the ways that employers can support immigrant rights. And we're going to talk a little bit about what those rights are. And we're going to talk about how we can organize in support of vulnerable immigrant communities. And there's going to be an opportunity at the end for Q&A. So if you want, you can put your questions in the chat, and we'll facilitate a Q&A at the end. I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves and their organizations. And I'm just going to say a few words to introduce our subject. So one of the reasons that this panel is taking place is that over 20 and counting of Trump's executive orders impacted immigrants. He authorized military involvement in immigration enforcement. He changed the rules so that now ICE officers are allowed to go into sensitive locations like schools, places of worship, and hospitals. He has limited the opportunities of people fleeing violence and persecution to apply for asylum in the United States, and he has suspended our refugee system so that even those who have been cleared and were waiting for their final papers have been thrown into uncertainty. He's increased the use of expedited removal so that immigration officers can more often deport anyone without hearing. And even something that hasn't been discussed much, regulations around green cards, which are thought of as permanent residency. They have also been changed so that even people with green cards returning from the US from visits to their home countries in they returned to San Francisco airport and they've been turned back for basically no reason and deported. So I believe that farmers need to play a more prominent role in this discussion about mass deportation and immigration. As a farmer, I've worked with people from Central America and South America for over 35 years. And I know that the statistics say that at least 50% of farm workers in the United States do not have appropriate documents to work here. And although this is true or may be true, it does not justify the disrespectful and racist statements about immigrants that we've been hearing or the racial profiling and inhumane treatment that is being meted out. Several of the large farm organizations have national policy and media departments. But as the anti-immigrant rhetoric escalated, none of those organizations have used their influence and resources to speak out about the important role that immigrants play in our communities. To me, this seems really shameful because many of these large and important, powerful farms that are members of those organizations benefit directly from immigrant labor and know full well that the rhetoric is racist and untrue. Well, I think it's difficult for individual farmers to speak up because of the fear that this could bring attention to their farms and ranches, thus endangering their employees. I do believe that as farmers, we can work with our farm organization allies like CAF, KTA, which is Kitchen Table Advisors, and California Farm Link to figure out the best way to talk about California's long history of immigrant contributions to the success and strength of our economy. So this panel is mostly focused on practical information that is needed by farm employers to prepare their employees or other members of the immigrant community for possible interactions with immigration officials. And with that in mind, Wendy Sosa of Kitchen Table Advisors has prepared several documents for you, one for employers and the other for individuals. And the guides are available in both English and Spanish. And Wendy is going to drop a link to those documents into our chat and also put them in the resources section of for this panel. So I think that just as important, though, as preparing for interactions with immigration officials is the need to speak up when we can regarding the contributions of immigrants and the importance of immigrants to the fabric and functioning of our communities. So we've heard reports that immigration officials are not always respecting people's rights. And I think Vivian is going to talk a little bit about ways to respond to that if you do observe it in person. So people have asked me, what good does it do to know your rights if ICE isn't paying attention to those rights? And I would say that we need to hold government agents accountable for their violations. That knowledge that you gain from trainings like this may result in fewer arrests, in part because it will reduce the anxiety and panic, which is very harmful and even dangerous to immigrants. So I believe that this is most certainly a case where knowledge is power. So thank you all very much for being here. I hope this is a useful panel for all of you, and I'm going to pass the mic forward to Nicole.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for having me. Just want to make sure everyone can see my screen. Judith or anyone, if you can just give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. So I am the supervising attorney at VIDAS. We are a legal services organization located in Santa Rosa, California. We serve all of the North Bay, Marin County, Napa County, Sonoma County, Lake County, Mendocino, Humboldt, Solano. We have offices in Vallejo, Petaluma, Santa Rosa, and then some satellite offices that serve students at the Santa Rosa Junior College, Napa Valley College. But we also work with organizations all throughout the state. So if you're located elsewhere, you please feel free to reach out to me. We can find you a resource local to where you're located. My job is specific to removal defense. That's my specialty. So whenever anyone is in immigration proceedings and the government is trying to deport them, that's my background. I started at VIDAS last year doing a farm worker rights program. So we actually received funding from the state to provide free immigration legal services to farm and agricultural workers. And again, there's organizations all throughout the state receiving that grant. So if you have some questions or some specific workers that you want to refer to me or the farm worker program elsewhere in the state, please reach out to me. My email will be at the end, and we'll be happy to put you in touch with the appropriate organization. Today, we're mostly going to be speaking about things from the employer perspective. The focus of this talk is as a community or as allies, how can we help to make our community, neighbors, employees safe? We also give specific focus talks about individual rights. So if you have anyone to refer to us, we can plan a different session, or we can match them with a local organization who's giving a Know Your Rights for individuals. So one thing I recommend to employers, first off, as we're getting ready for the next 4 years, while we're already in it, is to clearly mark your workplace with signs that say private, employees only, staff only. This is going to be a really good way to indicate where ICE or other law enforcement can and can't go with or without a warrant. I know in the context of a farm or an outdoor workspace, it sometimes can be a little trickier. You know, how do you mark land? But think of any time you have, say, maybe a garage or a barn or a shed, any sort of structure. That's a really good place to put on a private or staff only sign. Anywhere there's a fence, maybe indicating the start or end of a property. That's a great place to put up a sign. Any sort of office or structure you may have. Basically, that makes it very clear to any officer or law enforcement that this is the line that they cannot cross unless they have a warrant. We're going to talk a little bit about warrants. Anytime there is any sort of interaction with ICE or law enforcement on private property, you should ask to see the warrant. So for example, say you're at home and there's a knock on your door, you're not expecting anyone, don't answer the door. If they say through the door, it's immigration, it's ICE, DHS, open up, tell them to put the warrant through the doors. You know, they can slide it under the door. If you're in the context of your farm or business and they come into the office or the workspace, ask to see the warrant. Often they say they have a warrant, they'll show a piece of paper, they'll wave it around, but you have the right to see it, to examine it. And just doing that sometimes holds them to their burden to ensure that they're operating in the scope of the warrant or the law. There are two types of warrants, and we'll talk about that next. Another way you could help your employees feel supported is to invite VIDAS or another farm worker org to your community or to your business to talk. One thing, you know, as much bad news as we've received in the last few weeks, I can't say how many calls our org has received from concerned citizens or churches or from employers themselves asking, can you come? Can you speak with my employees? And, you know, maybe we just go for a half hour or an hour, but it helps employees feel supported. It helps them feel empowered, and it helps them see that their employer is actively concerned about the situation, which makes them feel comfortable going to work each day. So reach out to us if you would like VIDAS to come and speak with your employees, or if you are in a different part of the state, we are happy to match you with another org that can come and support. We speak Spanish in our office, and most orgs do, and there's other language capacities available. Just let us know. And then I recommend everyone visit ilrc.org to print the red card, or what we call tarjetas rojas. It's a little card that you can keep in your wallet, you can keep in your car. And right now they are really working. There was just an article, I think 2 days ago in the Times, about some workers who were stopped and they had their red card. They presented it. Eventually, the officer was not able to find any probable cause to detain them, and they were released and able to leave. The red card is a way to remind everyone, citizens and non-citizens, of their rights. So, regardless of immigration status, we all have rights under our Constitution: the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney. So I just recommend to everyone right now to carry these cards in their wallet. And if you have any sort of interaction with an immigration officer or a law enforcement officer, to present the card. It's in Spanish, it's in English. If you go to the ILRC website, you can order physical copies of the cards, or since I know they're in such high demand right now, they're recommending that people just print them out and pass them out to the community. I'll have that website also at the end where you can go get some copies of the red cards. So as I mentioned, whenever you're dealing with immigration or ICE, they should have a warrant to be entering private property or to be looking for a specific person. So there's two types of warrants. Administrative warrants, which is going to be issued by ICE themselves. So that's typically when they're looking for a specific person. So maybe that person has a prior deport order or some other scenario that they have an arrest warrant. So remember, that does not give them the right to enter private property. So that's why it's so important when there's any interaction with ICE in the community to ask to see the warrant. Because if they have a warrant and they present it to you and they say, we're looking for Nicole Gorney, this person does not work here. Here you go. Please leave. There's nothing else to do. They can't enter your property. They can't search for that person. So make sure you actually look at the warrant. If it is a warrant that's signed by a judge, that does allow them to enter private property, but that doesn't give them free rein. You have to look at the scope of what the actual warrant says. That's really important. So say the warrant gives them permission to enter an office space of a company or an organization. That doesn't allow them necessarily to go out into the fields and talk with workers. That doesn't allow them to go into a private home that's located on the same property, but next to the office space. So really look at the warrant. You can always ask if you can have it reviewed with your attorney before you allow them access to anything. And also, I recommend having training specifically for supervisors or for persons in your farms or companies so that they're familiar to ask for warrants when dealing with immigration officers. Have a plan in place. You know, if ICE comes to a work site and that's not necessarily where your farm or business is located, have a plan. Does that supervisor know who they should contact in the event of any ICE activity? You know, make sure there's a clear chain of command. Your supervisor can say to the officer, I'm not able to give you that information. Let me contact my supervisor. But make sure that your employees, especially your supervisors, are trained in what to do in the event that ICE comes to the workplace. This is blurry, so I also uploaded on the resources page some samples of some warrants. It's just to show you quickly the difference between a judicial warrant or an administrative warrant. So again, the judicial warrant is going to come from a court. It's going to be signed by a judge, and that's going to give them the right to inspect property or a place. So always look at the scope, always look at the specific language. Administrative warrant is signed by ICE. It's going to be when they're looking for a specific person, but does not give them the right to enter a property. So always ask to see the warrant and look and see who signed it. Is it valid? What the scope is? And if you need, you can have it reviewed by an attorney. One thing I wanted to mention here, sorry, is in the event of an I-9 audit, which is when immigration audits a business to say that they want to review their compliance with all I-9 verifications, you do have the right to an attorney. And so in the event that someone receives an I-9 audit notification, I recommend you reach out to an attorney. and they can be present for the audit. They can help guide you through the process. One way to find an attorney, if you already don't have one on retainer, is to contact your local county bar association and you let them know I'm looking for an attorney specific to represent my business in an I-9 audit, and they'll be able to refer you to attorneys in your area. It's not really an immigration attorney you need. It's kind of a quasi-immigration attorney, but also more, I would describe that as an employment attorney, employer side. So again, reach out to your local bar association. They'll be able to put you in touch with someone. Or you could be more proactive now and hire an attorney to have on retainer in the event of any I-9 verification requests or ICE activity. So, sometimes getting an attorney last minute can be difficult. So maybe now is a good time to just be a little more proactive, search for an attorney, engage in that relationship, and just have them on call in the event that your farm or business needs someone. In regards to talking to your employees or talking to your neighbors or community members who may or may not be documented, encourage them to find their local rapid response network. We are so lucky in California because we are just so organized. There are so many passionate community members ready to go. The Rapid Response Network, for example, I'm a part of the North Bay Rapid Response Network, but there is one in every county in California. And this website here, the CCIJ website, will list every rapid response network in California. It's basically a 24/7 hotline here to support immigrants. So anytime anyone sees some ICE activity, it's important to contact your local response network because we can verify that activity and then also reach out to anyone that might be affected by, say, an ICE raid or arrest. We're a network of attorneys, organizers, and last week I think there was some an ICE arrest somewhere, I forget which county, and within hours, I saw that the Rapid Response Network had placed that individual with an attorney. So I don't know if anyone is in the North Bay. Up here, we have a yellow card. That's where we keep the that's where we share the rapid response number for the North Bay Rapid Response Network. I recommend people to just add that number in their phone, save it in their phone as a contact. It's also a really good way when there's rumors of ICE activity, but it may not necessarily be ICE. I know recently in San Jose, there were rumors of ICE activity and it ended up just being the sheriff. And the Rapid Response Network is a really good way to confirm or get the truth about an actual ICE sighting, because unfortunately there's often just a lot of bad information going around, and it's really important to have accurate information. So encourage any folks right now who are concerned to contact their local rapid response network and have that information on hand. Going back to the red cards, encourage community members now. Everyone, citizens and non-citizens, should carry those red cards. Keep it in their wallet. Put it in the backpack of their children for school. Put it in your work bag. I think it's just a good idea to have it around because I think in any event with law enforcement, we get nervous, and that's what they want. They want you to talk. They want you to give them free information. Just present the red card and remain silent. I always say when dealing with ICE, remain silent. The only exception to that is if you're asking to speak with an attorney. And then encourage folks to find Know Your Rights sessions. I know at VIDAS, we are having them at different community organizations twice a week right now. I have 2 tomorrow, actually. So again, there are resources out there. California, we are organized, we are prepared. We have to help match these individuals with the services. And right now, it's really important to spread the message of power and not panic. A lot of times when people are concerned, they're hearing information, it may or may not be true. So I can't tell you how many clients I have say to me, "Oh, Nicole, I saw on TikTok that this is happening." And I say, "Okay, let's check that source. Don't spread that around because that's really just going to create more fear," which again is exactly what the administration wants to happen. Let's share information. Let's share rapid response network information. Let's share the feeling of empowerment. That's going to be better than just sharing the fear. So encourage people to check the source of things they're hearing, to reach out to local reputable organizations or immigration attorneys. Hopefully we can help dismantle a lot of bad information that's going around, and a little bit of information goes a long way. So these are some orgs that I really like to get for materials in the community. The Immigrant Legal Resource Center, some of it is pretty technical, but then they also have really good information for community members. Everything is always available in Spanish and English and sometimes other languages. National Immigration Law Center is really reputable, a really great organization. And in California, CCIJ. You can go to our website and that will link you to most of these websites. But like I say, just remember when you're sharing information or when you're trying to put someone in touch with an attorney or an org, just make sure they're reputable first. Unfortunately, also in California, there's a lot of scams or bad immigration attorneys or immigration attorneys who aren't attorneys at all. So it's really important that we're referring the community to a licensed immigration attorney or someone who has a background in immigration, detention, removal. So just make sure you're referring everyone to a reputable source before you pass on the information. I'm going to pass it on to Vivian to talk a little bit about NorCal Resist, and don't worry, we're going to have plenty of time for questions at the end.
Thanks, Nicole. That is great information and segues nicely into talking about one particular rapid response network and what we do. So like Evan said, I'm a volunteer with NorCal Resist. I grew up in California and moved back here in 2020 when I got involved. NorCal Resist has existed since 2016, and we're community members that are organizing essentially for a better world. We do a bunch of different types of work that's all really on building infrastructure against oppression and empowering our community with resources and support. So a big part of that work for NorCal Resist is supporting our immigrant community members against various types of injustice. That happens in a number of different ways, including ICE bonds, know your rights trainings, deportation defense, and pro se, like self-help asylum clinics. And then most pertinent to our discussion today is we are the home of the Rapid Response Network for Northern California. So we're based in Sacramento, and we have a MigraWatch Rapid Response Network like Nicole talked about. So like she said, this is a regional effort. And so what, like our rapid response network may not be yours, right? Nicole talked about one in the North Bay, and we'll share the link to the group where you can find out about your rapid response network. So things might be slightly different for yours, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about what our MigraWatch Rapid Response Network does. So the goal of this network, like Nicole said, is to build power instead of panic. We're trying to make sure that we're getting verified information out to the community and tamping down on rumors and addressing those rumors, and then also providing real-time updated information about when ICE is in a community so that people can get support when they need. And this is in the face of, you know, Judith talked about all of these federal things going on, and lots of rhetoric and threats of things going on, and making sure that we're figuring out what's actually going on and then responding appropriately so that people aren't just living in sort of a vague sense of fear, but that our neighbors and our community knows what's actually happening, and then we can respond and support each other. So the network works by giving out a phone number that I will include a little pamphlet of what the phone number looks like. For us, we have little pamphlets, we have one-pagers, we have our number included with a little know your rights style card. It has the same information as the red cards that we share out with the community. Like Nicole said, once you find your number, you can put that in your phone. And then if you see ICE or CBP, Customs and Border Patrol vehicles, or think that you see them, you can call the number, or anybody can call that number. Then through the network, we will find somebody who can go and check that location and sighting and figure out, is it actually ICE? Is it a local sheriff? Is it a smog check station? Is it, there was one case where there was an unmarked vehicle that was on a levee. Somebody was concerned about it. Someone went and checked it out, and it was somebody testing the water in the levee, right? But they were coming from a federal department, so they had federal license plates, right? So figuring out, okay, who's actually there? What's actually going on? And then sharing that information back and out with the community to say, like, you know, this area is clear. NorCal Resist does this through our social media. So we just posted the weekly report that there were 10 different calls in our local area. One of them did end up being targeted enforcement. One was a verified ICE detaining somebody, but then the other issues that were addressed were actually not ICE. And so being able to put out that information and say, like, there have been lots of social media posts about ICE activity in this area. We've gone and verified it, and indeed there is not. So this means that parents can feel comfortable going and picking up their kids at school. And if they're recognizing that maybe there's something going on the highway and they want to know what's going on and be able to go about their day. So we've been monitoring this weekly and getting calls and then going out and verifying. And that's one of the big benefits, right? Is that we're sharing accurate information with our local community as opposed to people trying to just find any source for any information. And then potentially that's increasing panic and fear in the community. One of the other benefits, and Nicole touched on this as well, is that if ICE is actually detaining a person, then somebody can contact people like at VIDAS so that they know and they can connect them with a lawyer and get that process started so that we know what's going on, right? And that people who are being detained can be supported. If there is ICE activity, it can also be recorded. This is sort of getting into, like, if you are trained to be part of the Rapid Response Network, and we have a training for that to get people trained up to know what your legal rights are, to make sure that folks from CBP and ICE are following the law when they're detaining people, and making sure that they are not able to do their work secretively and detain people without people knowing what's happening in our community. So for me, it's really important being part of this network because I really want to protect and care for my community. And I think that immigrants in the US face a number of different injustices right now, and these threats of mass deportations and all of the federal orders are creating a lot of fear and panic. And it's really important, I think, for us who have the ability to support in these ways to help to figure out what is rumors, what is true, and really important to make sure that people know your rights, right? So Nicole was saying everybody has these rights. You know, having a rapid response network and sharing know your rights information is not somehow subverting the law. It is upholding the law and making it so that we can all live without a vague fear of what the government could do to us or our neighbors without the legal right to do so. So it's really important, I think, and really noble and should be celebrated that all of us are knowing more about our rights. I know that the new director of Homeland Security recently was complaining on TV about how people in Chicago are like knowing their right, or Detroit maybe it was, or know their rights, and so it's really hard to do enforcement. And like it should be hard to violate people's rights because we have those rights and we should have those rights. So for me, that's been a really important part of being part of this network. So I'm going to put up the link in the chat for the hotline to find the hotline in your area. NorCal Resist right now is the hotline for most of rural Northern California. So we're based in Sacramento, but then serving most of Yolo, Shasta, Butte, Colusa, Yuba, Sutter, and El Dorado counties, I think. I think I'm actually missing Placer County as well. So if you are in those counties, you should definitely attend a training. I'm going to share the link to NorCal's homepage. You can learn a little bit more about us and join one of the many other programs that we have. Like I said, there's a lot of different types of work that we do in addition to this in supporting our immigrant neighbors and our community. And also I'll share a link to our Instagram where we have a lot of the Know Your Rights information where we share out verified ICE activity. And then we have our Migra Watch training so that you can get trained so you know what it means to be part of the Rapid Response Network. Those have generally been happening monthly. I don't know about the other networks, how often they're sort of training people up to join the network. But once you find where you fit in, then you can get activated. And somebody had asked in the Q&A about volunteering if they are if they don't speak Spanish, and you can be a volunteer to do that verification. You wouldn't be answering the phones potentially, but you can definitely be part of this as a solely English speaker. And I think that's about it. So I'm just going to share some links in the chat, and then we can open it up for questions for Nicole or myself. Or
Yeah, before we go to questions, I just have a few other things I wanted to add. Yeah, absolutely. You can volunteer even if you don't speak Spanish. You might not necessarily be on the phone line, but there's so many other roles, especially legal observers right now. Like Vivian said, right now it's about upholding the law and ensuring that ICE and other government officials are upholding the law. And, it's very powerful to have someone there recording to ensure that happens. And so that takes all of us. Remember too, when we're talking about in the workplace and the right to remain silent with any ICE activity, that includes actions as well. So for example, ICE comes in, they say, everyone who is not born in the United States, go over here. That you have the right to not move. You don't, just by taking an action, like taking steps forward, that's admitting something. And that is the same as saying something. So again, you don't have to comply. I always say remaining silent is not just your words, but it's also your actions. So let people know, please don't answer anything in the workplace, or also do anything, especially not sign anything. One of their tactics is to say, if you sign here, you can go home today. And the person thinks, oh, I can go home to Santa Rosa. No, they're trying to get you to sign a voluntary departure order, and they want you to go home without seeing a judge. So never sign anything, ask for an attorney, and other than that, don't do or say anything. I want to touch a little bit on expedited removal. I'm sure everyone has heard about it. It is, I would say, one of the most concerning changes that we've seen so far in the new administration. Expedited removal basically gives them, immigration or ICE, the right to remove someone or deport them without them seeing an immigration judge first, if they've been here less than 2 years. However, there's some caveats to that. One, if someone is in active immigration proceedings, meaning they're waiting for their hearing, or they're waiting for a decision from a judge, they cannot be expeditiously removed. So right now, if someone is in immigration proceedings, and they typically would know this because they would have a hearing notice or they have some sort of document, I tell my clients to carry a copy of that around with them. Keep it in their wallet, keep it in their purse. That's proof that they are under the jurisdiction of an immigration judge, and ICE does not have the authority to remove them unless they terminate those immigration proceedings first. And ICE is typically pretty lazy, so they're not really going to do, they want the low-hanging fruit. So I'm encouraging my clients who are in removal proceedings to carry around proof of those proceedings with them. Also, you're not subject to expedited removal if you've been in the United States for more than 2 years. At first, I was thinking, okay, so this should mean that folks should carry around proof that they've been here more than 2 years with them, but that's just not really feasible. But what I am telling people to do is to have that proof ready. So take pictures of it, keep it on your phone, have a folder at home that your family knows where it is. And that should be anything on paper that again proves your presence of more than 2 years. So DMV records, utility bills, bank statements, cell phone records, anything that you have that's showing a date more than 2 years out. I don't recommend that that means that people say to immigration, you can't deport me. I've been here for more than 2 years, because again, that's an admission. I would just have that information saved somewhere and have your family know where that is in the event that you need to access it, or you're detained and you want to fight possible expedited removal. So I think that's good for people to know that I know everyone's hearing about expedited removal and it's scary, but not everyone is necessarily subject to it. And again, it's all about making sure ICE is doing their job correctly and not, that doesn't mean they're not going to do anything. That's not within the scope of the law, but it does mean that we can hold them to it, and hopefully if they violate the law, use that as a means to get a deportation vacated or get someone released from detention or get an arrest vacated, etc. So it's just really important that we document it. Okay, so I don't know, Judith, is there anything else you want us to touch on before we go into questions?
The only other question that I've heard from employees is with regards to what if you are arrested? What if you have kids and they're going to school? Is there something you can do? I've heard that it's advised that they appoint someone to be the guardian if they're a single mother, for example. And how would that work? How could they do that? What is that procedure about? That's a question that our employees have had.
Yeah, I've seen some specific workshops recently about guardianships, power of attorneys. I think it's a really good idea to get more information on that. Again, it's a discussion that the family's going to have together. You know, what would happen in the event someone is detained. So I don't necessarily think across the board everyone should go out and set up a guardianship, but I think it's something that people should get information on, but also at the same time, keep in mind that so far, and of course this could change, but so far in California, the ICE activity we've been seeing have been targeted to individuals with either a criminal history or a prior deport order. So not everyone is necessarily high risk. So I say to people, you know, try to analyze or speak with an attorney to understand your risk level and then maybe make those decisions. Um, this could change any day now, but right now in California, that's all we've been seeing is targeted enforcement. And so not necessarily everyone is high risk. I know, of course, it's just scary, but I don't necessarily think that means that everyone should go out and get a guardianship or, you know, relinquish the rights with their children. So they should really get individual legal advice before deciding to do that. But it is something good for people to explore.
Great. So we can go ahead and move to our Q&A feature. So for those of you listening at home, if you have questions for our panelists, you just look at the bottom of your screen. There's a little button that says Q&A. You can drop in your question there. One of the questions we have here, and one of the questions I think we've been hearing over and over again is, I think it's a little clearer to understand what the rights are on private property, on your farm, in your business, in your home. But what about out in public? Where do the rights exist? One of the questions specifically asked about recommendations for farmers markets operating in public spaces.
Yeah, I mean, the farmers market context is a really great question because that doesn't work there, or you can slap up a private sign. Obviously, it's not private. So then for that, we're going to remember to go back to the basics of not answering any questions, remaining silent, and not, if some officer comes up and says to one of your workers, "Where were you born?" Don't answer that. Or you can step in and even say, don't answer. You can also, I recommend to people to ask ICE or the officer, "Am I free to leave?" And if they say yes, then by all means, slowly walk away. And that can happen, in a public space. So unless they have probable cause to detain you, they can't detain you. So don't give them that probable cause. Another thing, and I didn't mention this before, so many of my clients have been coming into my office lately and they're like waving around their passport as they talk to me. And I say, "What is that passport doing here? Keep it at home. That passport is proof that you are not a United States citizen." So I recommend to workers, there's no need to bring your passport with you to work every day, or your national ID from your home country. For example, if you have a California driver's license, you of course need to have your license on you to drive. That's sufficient. And so maybe just reminding your employees best practices when going to farmers markets or other events, there for work, there is no need to carry your passport or other proof of citizenship on you.
Great. And, I think I've seen a few video interactions where when an ICE agent will start asking questions and someone responds, "Am I free to leave?" They'll try to evade the question, answering the question. They'll say something else. They'll deflect. They'll change the topic. And so I think what I've seen is sort of repeating that question over and over until you can get a straight answer, right? I mean, because they're not going to want to answer that question. So I think it's important to understand what the tactics are. So we got a few more questions in here. And one of them is, can you film and take photos of or record ICE presence or interactions? And then also, can you take photos of warrants?
Yes, absolutely. So I say that this is a place right now where we really need to use our white privilege, or those of us with citizenship or papers, use that privilege too. This is a way we can really support or show the immigrant community that we're here supporting them, and it definitely holds them accountable. So especially in the context of a public place like a farmer's market, absolutely. You can take a photo of the warrant, or you could also say, "Can I review this with my attorney?" So you don't have to just look at it and immediately be able to respond. You have the right to have it reviewed by an attorney, or to research its authenticity. So say, for example, you see there's a warrant, but it doesn't really look official to you, or it doesn't look like the examples you've seen. Absolutely say, I'm going to take a photo of this. I need to discuss this with my attorney," and you have the right to do that.
Great, thank you.
We've had a couple of volunteers saying, "Okay, if if I see ICE, what if I'm, potentially also under threat, or if I feel unsafe recording ICE?" And I think that that's where it's really figuring out what your comfort level is, and really examining what is your positionality in regards to this. And that's a personal decision for everyone to make. So I think that for all of us who want to be supportive, look at, do you have citizenship privilege? Do you have body privilege that puts you in a position where you will not feel as much under threat, or you can maintain your safety to show up in these spaces, to speak up? If you witness something, to be recording. You don't have to be up in an ICE agent's face to record that interaction. You can be stepping back and just recording them. And it's also really important that when you're recording that, you're focusing on ICE agents. You're not focusing on the person being deported, and you're not uploading that footage on your own social media page or anything like that, because you don't want to potentially harm that person's immigration case, you're trying to support them. So focus any recording on the agents, not on the person that they're deporting. And Nicole, maybe you have more details about importance of that.
No, but I mean, that's a really, really great tip. And say you're there and you see someone get detained, but they were also there with a family member, maybe speak with that family member and say, hey, I have footage of this. And if when you get an attorney, I would love to share it with them, or let me share it with you to share with your attorney. But that's a really good point of not sharing it with other networks, because that could put that person at more risk, or their family. But definitely make the focus the officer.
Yeah, I really appreciate that distinction. I think there's a real knee-jerk instinct these days to post injustices to social media without really thinking about it. So I appreciate you providing that context. I think the next two questions are somewhat related, so I'm going to share both of them. One of them is, if I have a green card or a legal document, I believe it is okay to show them the document and answer their questions, but refrain from signing any document without attorney. That's sort of the question. The other one is, in another presentation, I heard that DACA and anyone with an active immigration case cannot use the red card, that they have to disclose name and carry their documents with them. Is this true?
So using a red card is not the same as showing your ID and giving your name. So that question is hard to answer because it really depends on the context. In the context of driving and getting pulled over, of course, you have to show proof of your license. But if the officer says anything other than that to you, like, where are you going, or where do you live? I mean, you already show them your license. That gives them everything they need. You can give them your license with your red card. So that question is tricky. It just really depends. But if you have a green card or some other status, sure, you can answer the questions, but that's really case specific. I really think the best advice in general is not to talk with them until an attorney is present, because green cards are revocable. There's other issues there. So again, I think the best response is, am I free to leave, or I wish to remain silent, or I wish to call my attorney.
All right, excellent. Thank you. And the next question is for Nicole, regarding your advice that those currently involved in immigration proceedings carry that proof. Should they offer that info and proof if they are approached by ICE, or only once detained?
Yeah, I think that's once, or if detained, or if they ICE asks them for anything where they inspect them and they find it in their on their person. So I don't think you just hand that over automatically, but if they once it just seems like it's going anything beyond initial questioning, that's when it's presented. I don't think that necessarily showing that will make them say, oh, okay, be on your way. But it definitely is something that's going to have to give them pause. And so again, ideally, you're going to just be saying attorney, but have that on you. And in the event it seems like they're going to detain you, say, I'm in immigration proceedings, or I have this upcoming court hearing.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. See, and that seems to be all the questions we have in our Q&A, but if folks have additional questions, we do still have some time. So feel free to drop that in the Q&A. Would love to get any of your questions answered.
Can I ask a question? I'm wondering if any of you, or either of you, have heard anything about people with green cards, because there was a flight. People that I know went to Fiji to visit their families, and in Fiji people have dark skin, right? And they got back to San Francisco International Airport, and the customs people said, we have some questions for you, and then just put them back on and looked at their green cards and then put them back on the plane, said they'd been deported. And so I went to the Customs Enforcement website. It has a whole list of changes in green card regulations. And have you guys heard of anything like this? Or is this the first time, or do you know anything about it?
So, and that's not something necessarily that's new, is that, a green card, even though it's called lawful permanent residence, it is revocable and it's not necessarily permanent because you have to renew it and you can abandon your residency, you can lose your residency. And so I haven't heard of any specific instances of that, but, technically any admission to the United States is discretionary. So, that could happen, but without knowing all the information of that specific case, it's hard to say why. And so for that, for green card holders, I just recommend at this time, if they have to renew their green card, that they do it early. You can start the process 6 months before your green card is expiring. So start that right away. If possible, do that process with an attorney. So I haven't heard of any instances of that specifically from an attorney or someone saying this happened to their client, but green cards are revocable. But again, it's just really case specific.
There's a question, just some clarification on what happens to the children of parents who are deported.
Yeah, I mean that, sometimes they just stay with someone in the home, in another adult that's already in the home. It would be best at that point for the adult who now is the guardian to go to probate court and get an official guardianship from a probate judge in California, so that in the event that they need to make any decisions on behalf of that minor, they have the authority to do so. It's not really automatic that they would end up. I saw somebody had asked about the foster care system. That's not automatic. Typically there is another family member or adult or guardian or someone willing to take the kids. But I think if the plan is for them to stay here permanently while the parent is in their home country, then I think it would be best at that point to make sure you get an official guardianship so that there's no issues with that status or relationship until that child turns 21.
Great. Another question is, are there any public services that folks might want to be concerned about, whether that be, I think a lot of folks who are undocumented or in some precarious legal limbo are going to be nervous about accessing public services, whether that be subsidized health programs or affordable housing, anything like that. Is there specific concerns that folks, especially if you're signing documents, that has any connection whatsoever to public funding?
Well, I always say don't apply for something if you know you're not eligible for it. So, for example, if whatever you're applying for is only available to lawful permanent residents or U.S. citizens, don't ever do anything to try to say that you are one when you're not, because especially then if down the line you do get lawful status, that could be considered fraud, and that could be a way to rescind a lawful status. So if you find a program or a benefit like Medi-Cal, for example, that's available to people regardless of immigration status, by all means, I think you should apply. But if it's something that specifically is asking about your citizenship status or your right to live or work in the United States, don't ever say that you have authorization to live or work in the United States unless that's true. You don't ever want to disclose anything, especially on paper, that's not true. But if it's something in regards to your kids receiving a benefit, and especially if your children are US citizens, don't forget that that's a big difference. So if you're applying for something on behalf of your children to receive something that they have the right to receive as US citizens, that is different because it's in their name and it's not you receiving that benefit. Also, if you are applying for asylum, the you should get any public benefit you're eligible for, because the big issue with public benefits is this concept known as public charge, meaning that if later when you're able to get your green card or apply for your green card, the government is going to determine if you would be likely to become a public charge or a burden on the government, and that would be financially, but that does not apply to asylum seekers. And so I always tell people two things. Don't ever say you are a US citizen or lawful permanent resident until you are. And two, remember the distinguishment between your child receiving a benefit or a service versus you putting your name on that. So if your child qualifies for something and they are a US citizen, they absolutely should get that benefit.
Gotcha. And a follow-up to that, someone asked more specifically about food banks. It's come up a lot in conversation around utilizing church spaces for food drop-offs, things like that. Is there any concern around access to food banks?
I personally have no concerns or issue with it because that is coming from a third party. It's coming from either the church or whatever local organization is distributing the food. That is not coming from the government, and so that would not be considered something that would be analyzed for the public charge rule.
There's also like a number of food distributions really make sure to not require a lot of information. And so finding what types of food distributions in your community are not even asking for any information about who it is. They may ask for like the zip code or something like that to just know generally what that is. But I think also as potential allies, like amplifying those resources and making sure that people know where those resources are coming from and who that food distribution is with, and making sure that people feel comfortable accessing them. I think that can be helpful.
Yeah, appreciate that. A couple questions here may have already been answered, but just to repeat. So one person asks, in a public setting, if someone is detained, is the best policy to just stay silent and show the red card, and then to ask permission to leave? Is silence your best ally? That's the question. I think we may have already touched on that, but just to answer that one.
Yeah, I guess for that question, just remember there's immigration interactions or ICE interactions and then being detained. And those are two very different things. So when you're saying, am I free to leave? That's going to be during any sort of interaction or event. You know, you're at the workplace, they went up to some other person, started asking them questions. They told you to stay here, but they're not asking you anything. Then say, officer, am I free to leave? Yes. Okay. Slowly, calmly walk to your car and drive away. That's different from if you're detained. And so when you're detained, at that point, you're not free to leave. And that's just when it's really important to continue to remain silent and speak to an attorney.
Gotcha. Another question about children. Do parents need to do anything to prep children or get a notarized letter to make sure children are given to the right family member?
So that I would attend a specific workshop on that topic. It's a really complicated question, and I see some families that more proactively come up with their plan. But yeah, I would just recommend attending a workshop and having a family preparedness plan, and that may or may not include needing to draft up legal documents, but you know, maybe in the family there's already a sibling who's over 18. And so I would just attend a specific family preparedness training and find out more information about that and then decide together as a family.
Gotcha. I believe those are all the questions that we have.
There was something in the chat about asking to make sure that a number of resources were shared by participants. And I was wondering, Evan, if you or if KTA capturing those resources to be able to add to a couple of resource documents. It sounds like some of the participants would like to have access to those.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we can follow up with everyone who's attended this workshop and send you all an email with any of the resources referenced. And I know that KTA has been putting together some really good material, and CAP has also been working on compiling some of that information. So we will most definitely follow up in an email with those resources. So keep an eye on your email. I actually did see another question come in that's I don't think it's been discussed. One person asks, are there any ways for an individual to receive an H-2A visa while already being in the States?
No, but one final plug to contact us or other organizations who are supporting farm workers or ag workers right now. There is a program called DALE, Deferred Action for Labor Enforcement, and it's basically a way to get a 4-year protection from deportation and a work permit if you had experienced a workplace violation. So maybe they worked somewhere else and they weren't paid minimum wage, or maybe they experienced something more extreme like human trafficking. There could be an immigration relief for those who are actively participating in a workplace investigation. So if you know of any farm or ag workers who might want to talk about something they've experienced in the workplace, please refer them to us, or we'll refer them to another local organization. But yeah, an H-2A is a temporary farm worker visa, and it typically gives them an entrance into the United States for a limited amount of time, a season, so like 8 months, 6 months for a certain harvest. But there's no way to get it once you're already in the United States. But many folks who are in that position should still try to get a full immigration screening if they can, because maybe they qualify for another type of visa. So for example, if somebody was a victim of a crime here in the United States, they may qualify for a U visa. Again, if they experience anything while coming over to the United States, that could be trafficking, they could qualify for a T visa. So really, if anyone just has specific questions about their situation, they should try to get a full immigration screening to see if maybe they do qualify for another or lesser known form of relief.
Gotcha. Great. Well,
And
yeah, go ahead.
one final plug. So a number of the things that we've talked about are the situations at farmers markets, or when someone's maybe being detained, or when somebody maybe say that they're free to leave. One final plug is that there's a number of accompaniment programs across the state, and NorCal Resist does that, which is helping people when they have, say, ICE visits or some kind of needs, and figuring out how to apply for those benefits that they are eligible for. So I think that's another way to plug in and support our community, so that they're not fearing going to those check-ins or for applying for those resources, and making sure that they're applying for the right resources. So something else for you all to look into, joining some accompaniment program where you're at.
Yeah, those are really great programs, because I have to say the amount of people right now who have called our office or came in and just said, I have court next week, or I have an ICE check-in and I'm so afraid I'm just not going to go. That's what they want you to do, because if you don't go, guess what? Then you do get a removal order. It is so much better to go and get that signature, or tell the judge you need more time and get a new date, than to not go. And that is why they're trying to spread this fear. And that is exactly why we're trying to spread the message of power and not panic. So yeah, accompany someone to an ICE check-in or a court date, even if you don't speak Spanish. Could be awkward, but it is so impactful, and it makes them feel so much more supported. And so that is a really great way to get involved.
Right. Well, with our last couple of minutes, are there any parting words, final bits of advice, or ways that people can plug in and get involved?
I would say
power, not panic, and Luckily, we live in California, which is one of the more immigrant-friendly states, and this is our time to show our immigrant and farm worker community how much they mean to us. And, we got through this before with one administration, so we'll do it again. We're just taking it day by day, but we will get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just find out what your local hotline is in your area and figure out how you can get involved in the work that's going on in your communities.
Right.
Yeah, thank you all for being with us. And thank you, Nicole and Vivian, very much for your presentations. Really, really great.
Thank you all so much, and big thank you for everyone for attending today. It really means a lot to have so many people showing up to get this important information. I encourage you to share this. Like I said, we are recording the panelists as part of this. We'll be posting this on our YouTube channel. So I encourage you to share this with other farmers, with other farm workers, with other people in our community who really do care and value the immigrants who make our communities and our food system possible. So huge thank you, and we'll see you all at the rest of the conference.